I think we all want to make a difference with our life and with what we have. I think a lot of times, though, in life, there are moments where maybe you feel like it's just not possible for you to make a difference, for you to make an impact. Maybe not in this economy. You know what? If I had more, then I would plan to give more. But what I have right now just feels too small to make an impact. So what's the point of giving or serving if it won't change much of anything, right? I think we've all heard people say every little bit counts, but does it really? And if this is where we find ourselves, how do we give hope in this season when what we have doesn't feel like it's enough? If you're taking notes, the title of our message today is Just Do It. Thank you, Nike. Just do it. We're at that stage of our life with our son, where he's just way more aware of things than we realize. And so we're having to watch what we say around him because he just will repeat it everywhere and anywhere. And now it's at the point where he's telling, if he, there was a last week, Tess was in New York and for a wedding. And so it was just me and him for a few days. And he is like repeating everything we did to Tess. And in my head, I'm like, that's totally fine. But like, we went to a basketball game that started at 8:15 p.m., just way past his bedtime. And he was awesome. He did great. But my hope was like, he was telling my wife about how much fun he had. And specifically, he's been telling my wife about the people he had fun with at the game, which is very cute. Because he's like, yeah, I went to a basketball game. I saw Sam. It was fun. And he's like, Miss Sarah, fun. Mr. Scott, fun. And it's like, he's just repeating it. And in my head, I'm like, please, just don't tell her the time. Just don't tell her the time. Just don't tell her the time. And sure enough, it's night. It's nighttime. Game at nighttime. And I'm like, okay, he doesn't know time yet, so we're good, right? Because I don't know how my wife would feel about him being at a basketball game on a school night for him at 8:15 p.m. And, but she cared. And she asked, she said, what time was the game? I said, it was 8:15. She's like, oh, that's pretty late. She said, what time did you guys get home? Oh, we got home like 10 o'clock. And she's like, oh, okay. How'd he do? He was great. He was awesome. He woke up for school the next day. He was totally fine. He had a great time. And so we're at that stage where like he's saying things that he just remembers everything too. He has a great memory. And so we could have these moments where he might say something in public that like he shouldn't say, but he's gonna say it anyways because he's a kid. And I think we've all maybe witnessed moments like this. And so I wanted to share just some of my favorites that I've seen online. Check this out.
My dad has a go-to. My dad has diabetes. Kind and mild and important. I am beautiful. I am buffet. Mommy's fat. No. It's close. It's close.
What does it smell like?
It's like mommy's face.
My mom can make love better than any other mom.
Oh, the last one is my favorite. Can you imagine your kid being at school, doing a presentation, and I think my favorite part from the video is when someone says from the heart. And like that, like they wanted, it sounds like they can't keep talking from the heart. You're doing a great job, right? And but I think what's interesting is the more we try to tell our kids to be quiet, the louder they get, right? When you tell them to shush, they just seem to yell what you don't want them to say even louder. See, to them, what seems complicated to adults is often simple, right? They don't understand why everyone's pretending something isn't real, so they actually reassert their observation like it's an announcement. And so to them, what seems complicated is often simple, and while it can be embarrassing, I actually think it's also kind of inspiring, right? That they have this boldness to just confidently say whatever it is that's on their mind or in their heart. right? Have you ever been around a kid that just pointed out a practical need, right? Maybe you've been around a kid that saw someone that was experiencing homelessness, right, needing shoes or food, and the kid insisted that you help. And when the kid does that, you hesitate, thinking it's not that simple. I don't want to intrude. I don't want to insult them or make them feel judged. Besides, they probably have bigger problems and we're in a hurry. But try explaining that to a kid. They'll just look at you and say, why make excuses? They need help and we can give it, right? I think we've all had moments where we felt compelled to act, but convinced ourselves that it actually wouldn't matter, right? Maybe you wanted to give a compliment, but you thought it would be weird. Maybe you wanted to donate, but felt your amount was just too small. Maybe you wanted to apologize, but you worried about making things awkward. Maybe you wanted to serve, but you assumed that you weren't needed. Right? I think we all have unwritten rules about what makes an effort worth it. We think, if I can't give above this line, it doesn't matter. We daydream about what we do if we had more time, more money, more energy, and decide what I have is too insignificant for me to do anything right now. Big problems like world hunger or joblessness feel overwhelming, but what if we're wrong when we think that way? What if the smallest things, kind words, a few dollars, a tiny apology, or even a pair of shoes are more powerful than we realize? What if small acts can shape the most significant stories? And here's a question for us to all wrestle with. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. What if someone else is holding out for the thing you're holding on to? What if someone else is holding out for the thing that you're holding on to? I want to look at a story about a nameless person from the Christmas story who may have thought just that. And I wonder if what he did can point us toward what we should do. And we're going to pick up the story at the beginning of Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 1. This is what it says. It says, at that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child. Verse 6, and while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no lodging available for them. Now, I think when we picture this scene, we often imagine Mary and Joseph arriving to the town late, frantically searching for lodging at an inn. And what we imagine is that the innkeepers were pretty rude and not willing to take them in. And that's, I think, the story that's often told. But historically, there were no inns. Communities in that time didn't need them. Right? And so the word that has often been translated to inn actually means guest room. And so there was a cultural expectation that people would host guests in their homes. But what happened is there's so many people in town for the census that literally no one has an open guest room. Right? And many scholars believe that Mary and Joseph had actually arrived to the town. They had been there for a few days, right? Searching for a place to stay. And so Joseph was likely desperate. And I can imagine that people felt bad they couldn't host them. And so finally, someone offers them shelter. Not a barn, right? That's what the picture that we think of, right? Is a barn with hay and animals and all those things. But really, what it was more like a cave-like space at the back of a home where the homeowner kept all of their prized livestock, right? And so the manger was actually a stone that was carved into the floor, right? And so you could imagine that, imagine a cave-like space, and there's just this hole that's been kind of dug out in the floor. That's really what the manger was like. And so the host, I could imagine, probably wrestled with this thought of, you know, I want to help, but I don't think what I have is good enough. I don't want to send someone who just gave birth to a baby to the place where I keep my animals. And I can't imagine that this mom wants to put her newborn baby in a hole in the floor in the place where I keep my animals. I want to help, but this is all I have, and I don't think it's good enough. It's probably what was going through his mind. He probably also thought that it was better to offer nothing than something so insignificant. And I think it's an interesting dilemma for anyone, but especially for Christians where the stakes are even higher. James, the brother of Jesus, he wrote this about what it is to be a Christian. James 2:14-20. This is what it says. What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well, but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. Now, someone may argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds, but I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. You say you have faith, for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. How foolish. Can't you see that faith without good deeds is useless? I love that Jesus' brother James says that, yeah, even the devil believes that there's one God. And so he tells us that belief is not enough. Saying you believe is not enough. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. What you do more than what you say reveals what you believe. What you do more than what you say reveals what you believe. And we struggle with this, especially in our culture. We love to talk. We feel bad, and we offer thoughts and prayers and rant about injustice. We post on social media. We share quotes, and we buy bumper stickers and slogan t-shirts, and we raise awareness. But what we often don't do is personally inconvenience ourselves to actually help practically. Well, I posted about it. I'm good. I bought the shirt. I didn't wear it, but I bought it. We're good. I put the sticker on my car. We're good. Right? That's what many of us do, and we think that the job is done. But James is trying to remind us that true Christianity, how Jesus really wants us to live, isn't about how well you talk. It's about how well you love and how well you live. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. We hand people hope with how we live, not with what we say. There's a famous author, and really I consider him a pastor, named Brennan Manning. And he famously wrote this. He says, the greatest single cause of atheism today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips and deny him by their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world finds unbelievable. And so in this story, here's this man who has this house, and he's staring at a pregnant woman trying to figure out what to do. And I wonder how often James heard this story, how often Joseph and Mary shared their desperation with their kids. We don't know much about this man who opened up his home to them or his beliefs. We only know that he did what? He gave what he had. Even though he wished it were more and wished it were better, it was small and seemed insignificant, but it mattered because over 1,000 years earlier, it was prophesied, meaning declared in faith that this was going to happen in the future, that the Messiah, Jesus, would be born in a manger. And so what he had to give turned out to be better than what he wished he could give. And I think that's the key to cultivating hope in our own lives and in the lives of other people. And if you're taking notes, here's our big idea today. The hopeful help with what they have despite wishing they could do something more or better. Those of us that have been filled with hope, we just do what we can with what we have, even if we feel like or wish we could do something more or better. And the truth is, when I assume that you wouldn't want what I have to give, I'm robbing both of us by not even offering. Think about that for a moment. What might you be robbing someone else of by not even offering what you have? Even especially when you feel like I know God's wanted me to give this, but I don't want to because it's not really that great. At least I don't think it's that great. See, sometimes your little something is actually the best thing without you even knowing it. Because here's the reality. A penthouse would not have fulfilled the prophecy of Jesus being born in a manger in Bethlehem. And I think when we focus on what we can't do, we don't act. And we miss out on the blessing of seeing God take what we have and doing something that only he can do. The man in this story, he shouldn't matter, but he does. Because everyone matters when the story matters, and God's story of love for humanity is the most important story of all. And here's the truth. You can only give what you have, not what you wish you had. And so what would happen if you stopped second-guessing yourself? What if you gave the compliment? What if you offered the apology? What if you invested the $12? What if you served the 2 hours? Because God isn't asking for what you don't have. He just wants you to offer what you do. And when you give what you've got, you become a part of something bigger. See, this man's role in Jesus' story matters because he offered the little he had. And throughout God's story, it's the little things that oftentimes have made the biggest difference. And I believe God honors those who simply give him what they have, including whatever small thing you might be dismissing right now. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. No matter how small it seems to you, giving takes what is and makes room for the hope of what could be. Regardless of what you're generous with, I think generosity always creates the opportunity for there to be room for more. And you may say, well, why does it do that? Why do you believe it does that? I think when we're generous, we're most like Jesus. He's the greatest example of generosity that we have. And so when we choose to be generous, I actually think we're becoming more like him. And Jesus is generous not to give us what we need, but to go above and beyond that. And when we are choosing to be generous, when we're choosing to be like Jesus, what we're actually saying is, God, if I give what I have, what I'm saying is, I believe that you could do more with this than I could do if I held on to it on my own. And so it opens the door for there to be room for more. And so what if someone is holding out for the thing you're holding on to? What if there's a little girl whose life will be changed if you step out and serve in kids ministry? What if there's a family who will be reached if you invite them? What if there's a community project that'll finally get off the ground because you started giving? And here's what I love about our church. You guys are so generous. I've seen this lived out just in the last couple weeks. And I won't go into the details of it, but I want to share just a story of a family that came to me and said, hey, we want to make Christmas happen for another family that is just in need. Do you know anyone? And so in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, I know some families, and decided on a family to connect them with. But in my head, what I thought was, okay, we'll give you what we want you to spend on them, and you guys figure it out. And they said, no. We want to take them shopping. We want to take their whole family on a shopping spree, and that's exactly what they did yesterday. Mind-boggling. And here's the thing. I could imagine that even though they went above and beyond, they probably were thinking, man, I wish we could have did more yesterday. And I'm like, you did more than enough. And that family is never going to forget this Christmas. This is going to be one that they remember forever, that there was another family that was a part of their church that said, we want to help them, we want to bless them, we want to make sure that this Christmas is not a burden for you. That's what it's about. And one of our values here at South Hills is that we won't ask others to do something that we're not willing to do. And so I want to invite Seth out, if he's back there and can hear me. And you guys know, for those that know me, I love shoes. Love shoes. I got too many shoes. And I got a lot of shoes. Let's just say that. And my wife thinks I have a problem. I just told her it's my hobby. And here's the thing. It's about giving what you have, not what you wish you had. And I think when we give what we have, it's easy for us to say, you know what, I'm gonna give the worst of what I have. I don't wear that anymore, I can give that, that's easy. That's not generosity. That's unloading the things that are taking up space in your house. That's what that is, right? And so I could have told Tess, hey, when you come to church, can you bring me those shoes that are so far back in the closet that clearly I don't care about them? But you can ask her. I said, hey, I need this pair of shoes, and I need this pair of shoes, and here's where you can find them. This one's gonna be right next to the bed because I wanna look at it, because I like it. I like looking at it. This is gonna be, I love shoes, okay? Don't judge me. And this one's right underneath the bed because it's another pair that I love, I like. And so I wanna practice what we're talking about, and so I need to see what size these are. Anybody wear a 10 and a half? 10 and a half, I got a 10 and a half. You, I saw your hand first. Come here, man. These are yours. The only thing I ask, don't wear them to church, okay? Don't remind me that I gave them away, okay? And now here's the thing. There's tons of shoes that I wish I had. I can't give that, but I can give what I do have. And man, is it gonna make more room for me to buy more shoes? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. And so here's our challenge this week for us all. Here's the challenge for us this week. Here's what I wanna challenge you to do. Find one simple way to bless someone in your community. They can be in this church, they can be in your community, they could be connected to you and somehow bless them with something you already have. Find one simple way to bless someone in your life with what you already have. I think oftentimes we think that it's gotta be money, it's gotta be buying something. It's not always that. You can bless someone with your words. You can encourage someone who just desperately needs to be encouraged. I experienced this morning. I was in my Uber coming to church this morning, and I requested quiet. The conversation preference, you can tell them you don't want to talk. I put quiet. He didn't listen. He didn't see that. I get in the car. He sees where we're going. He's like, hey, we're going to Burbank. I said, yeah, we're going to Burbank. He said, okay, South Hills Church. He looks back. I put my headphones in. He looks back. Before I could turn anything on, I heard him. He said, are you a pastor? I said, yeah, I'm a pastor. And then he started telling me his whole life story. And I was like, okay. All right, here we go. Armenian guy, so kind, was telling me that he's on his way home, been working all night and driving all night. And he was like, man, I'm so glad when I saw your request because I live in Glendale, so this is kind of on the way to me going home. And then he opens up about his whole life story about faith and religion and just shared how he had terrible experiences at churches. And he said, this is a question he asked me, and I was like, man, it's too early for this. It's like 5 a.m. He goes, man, I'm trying to figure out how you could work for something that could hurt someone. I said, God, you really trying me this morning, God. You really trying me this morning. And I just shared with him, I said, look, man, I apologized on behalf of the church. The worship team can come back and join me. I apologized on behalf of the church, and I said, hey, I'm sorry for those churches that hurt you. And I could say, look, the reality is the church in itself is made up of imperfect, broken people. So it's not surprising that you've been hurt, but don't let your hurt change how you see God, because God is perfect, and he still loves you, and he's still for you. And there's a life that he desires for you that I believe is still available to you. And so we're having this conversation and this dialogue, and he pulls into the parking lot. And in my head, I'm being honest, I'm thinking, man, there's a lot I got to get done before people start to come and all this stuff. And so let me just get out of this car as fast as I can. And as I open the door, I just sense, those moments where it's like, don't leave until you do this. And so it just felt like God was saying, hey, pray for him. That's what you can give him. Give what you have. You can give him a prayer. You can give him a little bit of hope. You can encourage him. And so prayed with him. And after we prayed together in the car, he looked back and he said, can Armenian people come to your church? I said, yeah. I said, look, I know you're going home to go to sleep, but if you wake up in time, you should try to come to the 11:30 service. It's the latest one we have. And if not, just try to come back next Sunday. He said, okay, maybe I'll come. And I said, you know where we're at. You can just look it up in your Uber history. You know where we're at. And then he said, hey, do you know any Armenian churches nearby? I said, I don't know, but I can look one up for you. So I Google. There happened to be one in Burbank. And I said, here's one. If you want to check that one out, you can check that one out. But you know where we are. I gave him what I had. I gave him what I could give him in that moment. And so it's not always a physical thing. It's not always monetary. But what if it's just a few kind words? What if it's when that barista gives you your coffee that you ordered, you say, you know what, thank you so much for making that for me. And you just take a moment and say, hey, I know you probably are in a rush, but how are you doing? Because I think, man, whenever I ask a service person how they're doing, they're always surprised. They're like, they kind of catches them off guard. They're like, oh, I didn't know you cared about how I was doing, right? And that's all it takes to give someone a little bit of hope that like, man, like someone sees me, someone cares about what's going on in my life. That's giving someone hope. And so we've been filled with hope. You haven't been filled with hope to hold on to that hope. You've been filled with that hope to give that hope. And the best way we can give that hope in this season is to simply give what we have and watch what God does. Can I invite you to
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that He's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, or whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances, and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you, and thank you for watching our online service today.